side, I see the born of no return. It's just ahead now, it's just ahead now. Can't you see we're rushing for the end? I see the point of no return. Now see the point of no return. It's just ahead.
Well, good evening, everybody. It's Tuesday again, November 4th, 2014. It's Election Day here in the United States of America, and I hope you all got out there and dutifully did your civic duty and cast your vote for doo-doo or poo-poo or caca if you had a third choice. And that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about tonight. Regardless of whether the Demopublicans or the Republicrats win today's election, regardless of which of our major parties prevails, do you really think things are going to be any better for you? Or like so many other cynics out there, do you suppose maybe it'll just be a different gang of pickpockets grabbing hold of your wallet while you're not watching? You are listening to Wide Awake News on the Rents Radio Network. My name is Gary Hendershot, and for about the next hour or so, I'm going to be barking at the moon, mostly about the elections. Now, I suspect there are many opinions out there. I've heard a lot of them. I know people who chastise me for even bothering to vote. They say, "Oh, come on, Gary, why do you even bother? You know it's not going to make any difference. You know that you're not going to affect any real change by going to the polls and casting your vote." But you got to remember, in my generation, I am a child of the 60s, and in my generation, we still had civics class in high school, and it kind of got beat into my head that voting was a civic duty. You had to do it. I mean, even if you didn't like the two guys that were running, you had to kind of hold your nose and vote for the pile of poo-poo that stunk the least. It was just part of your civic duty. It was part of what you were supposed to do as a citizen of these here formerly United States. Well, obviously, there's been quite a bit of reporting on the elections here in the United States, and I'm going to cover some of that tonight. But, after the first break at the bottom of the hour, I will be inviting folks from the audience to call in and provide us with their opinion. Hopefully I will get at least a couple of calls from people who have opinions different from the one that I espouse. Now, I would like to entertain a variety of opinions on this matter. The phone-in number, get your pencil and paper and write this down, is 877-342-6673. And I will be inviting callers right after the first break. I'd like to get through some of the articles that I've got here to lay the groundwork. And then I'd really kind of like to hear what your opinion of the election process is, and whether or not you really think that getting one party or the other in office is really going to affect change for the better for you. Because, I mean, let's face it, that's why most people, go to vote. They're hoping that, something's going to change that will make the government more responsive to their needs. I guarantee you that's why big corporations like to invest big dollars in election campaigns. I guarantee you that's why Israel and their U.S. entities, AIPAC, and whatever else. That's why they throw big money at the campaigns to make sure that they're on the forefront of the politician's mind when it comes time to do that foreign aid allocation. But it is interesting that while everybody had their attention on the election process, the scoop came down about that IRS scandal. You remember that IRS scandal? It happened a little while back. Remember there was that lady Lois Lerner who screwed up taking the Fifth Amendment. And she basically made a statement claiming, "I'm not guilty, and now I take the Fifth Amendment." Well, you can't do that. Okay, that obviously this woman was not properly coached by the IRS attorneys. You cannot state your case and then claim Fifth Amendment privilege. Once you have testified, you are open to cross-examination. And that's why she was, in theory, held in contempt, although I don't think the lady ever saw the inside of a 6x9 and never met her roommate named, well, I was going to say Bubba, but this would be Bernice, who thinks she's pretty. Never got into any of that, but we had this issue where her hard drive mysteriously was destroyed, and they lost all the emails, so there was never any proof that, while you were worrying about the election, this came down. Now, this is an article from Investment Watch blog. Sometimes these guys have a good article. Sometimes, they're a little wacky. So, you got to kind of consider the source. But one of the stories that was coming out is, not a smidgen of corruption in the IRS targeting of conservative groups. See, that was the key issue, was that the Democrats apparently used the powers of the IRS to punish conservative special interest groups by denying or slowing down the process of them obtaining tax-free status. So if you wanted to organize a community group that you wanted to set up as a nonprofit to promote conservative arguments on things, maybe have an anti-Obamacare stance, or maybe have an anti-tax stance, or maybe even an anti-immigration stance, if you wanted to organize a grassroots group, a little movement, where you get a whole bunch of your neighbors together and go out and hold up signs and state your case, normally that would be a tax-free type scenario where any contributions that you might receive, you could use to buy your signs and banners and buy your advertisements or whatever. Now, progressive groups are masters of using tax-free groups to push their agenda. Conservative groups have been a little slow catching on, but in recent years, particularly with this Tea Party thing that came along, 6, 8, 10 years ago, when they first started up, they thought, the Democrats have got a way of doing this. We're going to follow their game plan. We're going to set up some tax-free organizations. We're going to get grassroots organizers together. We're going to go out. We're going to argue our case in the competition for hearts and minds of the people. We should be able to put our argument out there and do it as effectively as the progressives. Seems like fair and reasonable to me. But, if you are a progressive administration and you find yourself with the keys to the executive washroom over at the IRS, you might think otherwise. You don't want the competition of ideas for your agenda, and you wish to use whatever power you have at your fingertips to keep that argument off the scene. And that's what happened. It appears that the Democrats in charge made some phone calls, typed some emails, and convinced those who they had appointed to high-paid positions in the IRS to either, dramatically slow down or deny tax-free status to conservative organizations. But there's not a smidgen of corruption at the IRS. Yes, there was. It seems that the big offenders were Kay Hagan, Jeannie Shaheen, Chuck Schumer, and Al Franken. Now, I remember Al Franken from his Saturday Night Live days. He used to be a writer for Saturday Night Live way back when Saturday Night Live was actually entertaining. And I remember some of the characters he portrayed. And, he was a funny guy. I kind of wish he'd have stayed in comedy because as a legislator, he's left much to be desired. Democratic colleagues, including Chuck Schumer and Al Franken, who joined with Shaheen in quietly writing a letter to then IRS Commissioner Doug Shulman. Bombshell memo. Jeannie Shaheen conspired with White House insiders on IRS targeting scandal. IRS Chief Counsel William J. Wilkins, a White House visitor described by insiders as the president's man at the IRS, personally wrote in a hand-stamped memo to Senator Shaheen on official Department of the Treasury letterhead on April 25th, 2012. Yes, these people have been caught with their fingers in the cookie jar. What they did was patently illegal. They will never see the inside of that 6x9 with Bubba or Bernice as their roommate, and they will continue in their elected office unless perhaps they get de-elected at some point. It's how things are done. Those in power will use that power to stay in power. Now, I mentioned that it's the elections here. Well, they also had elections in Ukraine. The western portion of Ukraine, that portion of Ukraine that is controlled by U.S. and EU interests, held their elections to much fanfare. The elections were given a stamp of approval by boards that certified the elections. They had EU advisors in there. They said, "Yep, these elections are clean, neat, and tidy. Everything is cool. The elections in Western Ukraine are official and good." Well, the folks in Eastern Ukraine, now these are the breakaway. This is the breakaway portion of Ukraine that looked at what was coming in as the government in Kiev basically said, we don't like these guys. We don't want to have anything to do with them. We would like to split off our little portion of Ukraine, set up our own little country over here, because we do not wish to associate with these guys at all. They were supported by Russian interests. They also held their elections over the weekend, and obviously, they weren't at all interested in having U.S. or EU election monitors come in and monitor their elections, but they did have election monitors come in from Russia and other BRICS nations that looked over their elections and certified the elections as being perfectly legitimate and reasonable and an accurate representation of what the people of that area of Ukraine wished to have. Now, of course, because the elections in eastern Ukraine were not certified by U.S. interests, the U.S. is calling those elections totally invalid. And you will hear on the media that those elections were just terrible, illegal. These are terrorists. This is a terrorist organization. Those elections are just totally invalid. Strangely enough, the Russians seem to be a little bit more open-minded about things. They've looked at the elections in western Ukraine and said, okay, if that's what the people of eastern Ukraine want, that's what they should have. And you know what? Our buddies here in eastern Ukraine, I'm getting confused. The U.S. interests are in the western portion of Ukraine. I'm going to go ahead and put the map up here. The western Ukraine includes Kiev, just to the west of of that big river that kind of bisects Ukraine. The eastern Ukrainians are the ones that support Russia or that are supported by Russia. Now, it's gotten so tense over there that Porkychenko, or whatever his name is, the guy who's running the western portion of Ukraine, the guys who are backed by the U.S., they're moving troops in a little bit closer to some of these contested areas. And some reports coming out have indicated that Russia has also moved some troops a little bit closer to the area. Now, for some time now, things have been kind of quiet in Ukraine. It seemed like the killing and the mayhem had kind of settled down. It almost looked like these guys were going to let bygones be bygones, and if not continue as one nation, at least not be hostile to each other anymore. But there is some question of that at this stage in the game. We really don't know. We really don't know. This Ukrainian situation, like so many other little embers that are, kind of glowing red hot out there, at any moment could break into a raging fire. And no sane, rational individual wants it. But sometimes you have to wonder whether those in charge are really sane and rational. On the healthcare front, one of the big hammers that the GOP has been using against the Democrats, of course, is Obamacare. And as all of you out there know, I just dearly love Obamacare. Thank you, Obama, for that free health care. I just feel so warm and fuzzy knowing that I now have free health care. Yeah, right. Well, the Republicans have figured out that Obamacare is not real popular with average Joe out there, and they've been using this as a club to beat Democratic opponents with. And apparently it's working. It's looking right now like the Republicans may just pick up a majority in the Senate at least. Whether or not they get a majority in the House of Representatives is still up for question. It's possible. It's possible. We may have another situation where we have a Newt Gingrich-style Republican majority in the House of Representatives, and also have the Republicans in charge of the Senate. Haven't had that since the Newt Gingrich era. The contract with America. Some of you out there might be old enough to remember that. Bottom line is the contract with America that Republicans promised us last time around. That contract, well, let's put it kindly. They were in breach, okay? The GOP was in breach of contract. And frankly, if we could have sued them for that breach of contract, it would have been much more satisfying than what we got. They made us a lot of promises, none of which came true. Instead, they came in riding on their white horses, telling us about how they were going to do all these great things that we had thought they were going to do, and all they did was rape us even harder and take us into yet more wars. So, as you sit there thinking, I'm going to punish those darn Democrats for Obamacare, and I'm going to punish those darn Democrats for Syria, and I'm going to punish those darn Democrats for not getting our boys back home out of Afghanistan like they promised us. I'm going to punish those Democrats. I'm going to vote Republican. Please, consider your history. We've been down this path before. And when we get back from this break, we're going to discuss, whether or not we really believe that a change from a Democratic Congress to a Republican Congress might really change anything for you, for me, for average folks. I'm hearing the music. It's time for me to slide out of here for a few moments while the studio sells some products to keep the lights burning. I am Gary Hendershot, and I'll be back right after these important commercial announcements. Alrighty, we're back from that blatantly commercial interruption to the evening's festivities. On the way out for the break, I was talking about how the GOP was using as one of their hammers to beat up the Democrats, using Obamacare, because they know Obamacare is very unpopular with the public. So the GOP assumes that the Democrats has some weakness there. Well, in another report, and this one, let's see, the Gateway Pundit, the gatewaypundit.com. Now, frankly, this is a new source. Haven't really researched this source. Don't really know that much about who's behind it and what axe they've got to grind. But they have reported something interesting. The headline is Obama forces insurance industry to withhold 2015 prices until after the midterm elections. Gee, I wonder why. Well, some say it's because in 2015 your Obamacare premiums are going to jump about 15%. Yeah, 15%. Now, I don't know about you, but I did not get a 15% raise last year that would help me absorb a 15% increase in healthcare costs. Matter of fact, I think in the last couple of years, my income has actually declined a little bit. But they're telling me that now that the federal government is in charge of my health care, I'm going to have to pay an extra 15%. Well, see, the Obama administration did not want that to get out to the public because it might harm Democratic candidates. So for the first time ever, normally insurance companies release their policy pricing guidelines for the coming year 60 days in advance. Now that health care is under the purview of the federal government, it is politicized. Politics takes precedence over business needs, and the politics this year indicated that might be a good idea not to tell folks that their insurance premiums were about to take a 15% jump until after the elections. So a specific order was issued by the federal government to insurers participating in Obamacare not to follow tradition, not to announce their 2015 pricing guidelines until after the midterm elections. Now, what do you think of that? I mentioned that during this half of the show, We are going to take some phone calls. I want to hear your opinions on whether you think this election might change things for the better or for the worse for you. That number again is 877-342-6673. And I understand we do have our first caller on the line. I got Rob from Minnesota. Rob, are you there, man? Oh, it goes good. Sometimes better than others. I figure, I'm not much I can do about it except complain. So I'm just sitting here barking at the moon about stuff I can't do much about. How about you? Did you get out and vote today? Yeah, which did you vote for? Did you vote for poo-poo or doo-doo?
And he even kind of has the look, he almost looks like a Andy of Mayberry. But the guy that spent the most money, had the biggest yard signs and the biggest glossies everywhere, looks exactly like, straight, general casting for Dukes of Hazzard. This guy, big potbelly.
Oh, you're kidding.
And, he looked exactly like Roscoe P. Coltrane, and I said, "Oh my God, no!"
Now wait a minute. Now, I mean, beyond their looks, I mean, you certainly are not voting for one or the other based on their looks. I mean, I can understand women voting for Fabio instead of Pee Wee Herman, but come on. I mean, more went into your decision over who to vote for than their look. I mean, it could be that Roscoe was a more qualified guy.
Well, I tell you, the guy that looks like he came from Dukes of Hazzard is a mayor in a small city around here, and one of the issues that we have is that we are a supplier of frack sand, to all those people that are fracking the environment, and so they wanted a frack sand washing facility in his small city, and one of the doctors from Mayo wanted to give a presentation. In our fair city, he gave a 2-hour presentation. In the fair city where this Roscoe P. Coltrane was the mayor, he said, "You got 15 minutes. You can't use any of your, you can't use any of the overheads or anything. Tell us what you got and shut up." And the other guy, some people that I know that know me to be a tinfoil hat wearing wacko, and so they don't listen to me very much. But they are people that served in the military, Marines, and they're actually people that I like and admire, even though they think I'm crazy. These are exactly the type of guys that I would like to be in our service. The soldiers that I'd like to have defending this country. They speak very, very highly of the Andy of Mayberry type. So that's who I voted for.
What do you think now in these midterm elections, at least the ones that were relevant to you? Do you think you might get a positive change that's going to do you some good, your neighbors some good, or do you think you've just changed flavor of thieves? What do you think?
I'm guessing that, I went to my Democratic congressman's site and wanted to leave a message because I have talked to him several times and, given him all the 9/11 questions and everything. And I've asked him to look at the 28 redacted pages. And anyway, I called into his site last night, and no one was there taking calls. It's like they had already cleaned out the office. They're ready to leave. And he's been there a long time, so I think he's I don't know if he's thinking that he had, you know, that the Republicans are going to have a clean sweep or what. But I didn't see any. You know, I've called before and talked to you know, the people in the office, and they talked to me for a long time. You know,
I'll tell you, Rob. You know, I hate to cut you off, but we're going to be coming up on a break in about a minute here, and I want to give my next caller a chance. Parting comment.
One more thing,
please.
Gary?
Parting comment.
Gary, can I say?
Go ahead.
I gotta give my hats off to one guy that ran for state attorney general. You know, I went through and I was using the Jesse Ventura. I didn't want to vote Democrat, Republican, so I just vote third party and all the things. And there was one third party that came up on the state attorney general, and I'm really hoping for a Jesse Ventura because he listed as his party the legalize marijuana now. And I just said, "Oh man, this guy's brilliant!" You know, because it's right there on the ballot. It's not a ballot initiative, but that's the party that he ran under, and I just thought it was absolutely brilliant. You know, that's just my 2 cents. Thanks for the
Rob.
time.
Hey, I appreciate your opinions on things. I do have another caller in the queue. We've got Mark from Connecticut. But with the music playing in the background already, I'm going to ask Mark to please hang on until after this brief commercial break, and we'll get back with some more of your opinions on the elections right after these commercial announcements. Be right back now. All righty, and we're back from that blatantly commercial interruption once again. My name is Gary Hendershot. You're listening to Wide Awake News on the Rents Radio Network, and we're talking about the elections. It is that day. It's November 4th, 2014. Today was Election Day here in the USA. I'm trying to get your opinion. Want to know what you think. Can an election, maybe not this one, but can any election really make things better for you, for me, for the USA in general? The number is 877-342-6673. And just before the break, had Mark from Connecticut on hold. Not sure if he's been patient enough to hang in there, but Mark, you still hanging with me? All right, sir. Well, did you get out there and vote today?
Yes, sir, I did. In fact, here in Connecticut, which is typically a blue state, I hand wrote on my sticker that I affixed to my shirt that says I voted today. Well, underneath voted, and today it says I voted Republican today. Now, listen, I have as much voter apathy as the next person anywhere, perhaps even more so. But here's what I do know about the election process. I do know that the founders of our country thought that there was some value to the election process. I do know that a great many brave American soldiers have died defending our right to participate in the election process. And for as much as I don't believe in our current political climate that our vote really has a great deal of impact, I do believe that there is a place for the election process and a place for government. But there needs to be some serious change in the mechanics of our government, and a recognition of the hierarchy that is actually pulling strings so that people actually begin to wake up and vote with some intelligence.
Well, let me ask you a question. When you went to vote, did you have to show an ID? Did you have to prove you were you to get to vote?
Yes, I did, and I
did too. When I went in to vote, they made me show my driver's license. I had to prove that I had to show a picture ID. I had to show that I was who I was representing myself to be. And there's some states that seem to think that that's racist. Now, how do you feel about having to do you feel like they were picking on you, making you prove that you were who you said you were before you cast your ballot? Do you have any problem with that?
Absolutely not. You get to cast your ballot once, And if you prove who you are, and they cross your name off of the lists on where you claim to reside at, okay, based on what you show on your identification, that's your vote. You get to cast your ballot once. One person, one vote, end of story. And you have to prove that you are a citizen of the United States in order to participate in the electoral process. I absolutely applaud my state for forcing me to present identification. And I chastise any state that does not require the same.
How would you feel about this? Now, you know, we had these elections in Ukraine where the election monitors for the guys in eastern Ukraine that are trying to break away from Kiev, you know, they were provided by Russians. So of course the United States is going poo-poo. You know, that election's invalid because, you know, those Russian election monitors are stinky doo-doo.
Right.
They're
we don't have our fingers in the pie.
Yeah. Now, just suppose I told you that here in the United States, in 16 states of the U.S., the George Soros-funded organization Common Cause is providing the election monitoring. Now, would you think that, you know, there was any reason to be concerned about the efficacy of those elections with a George Soros-funded organization monitoring?
Yeah, that just gives me a warm fuzzy all over. How about you?
Oh, man, it just tingles all over my body. I just know those elections are clean.
There's no possibility of corruption on domestic soil, but, you know, if we can't have our fingers in the pie in foreign elections, oh, well, they're completely invalid. Let me think about that for a minute. Yeah.
Now, how do they do the elections in your state? I mean, do they have an electronic machine? The mechanics of how you voted, you know, because we've had so much suspicion about, you know, some of these computerized election gizmos. There's been some question about whether or not they're tallying the vote straight. How do they do it there in Connecticut?
It is tallied electronically. We have the ballot forms that are 8.5 by 11 sheets. We use a black Sharpie, and we fill in the little circles for the candidate of our choice based on the party that we're selecting, and then we slide it into the machine, and it scans the selections and tabulates
so you got
all
the
of
scanner.
the votes.
You got the scanner counter. So you know you do get a paper ballot that you can mark with a pen. And then it is scanned and tabulated electronically. Now,
yes.
How confident are you that? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, because we are filling out paper ballots, those paper ballots are not immediately discarded, and a recount can take place based on those paper ballots.
Okay, so if there was some indication that maybe the scanner was not properly calibrated or something, you know, we've had indications that some of these electronic touchscreen machines had calibration issues with the touch, so that when you touched the Republican, it flagged the Democrat or whatever. You know. So let's just say that this scanner gizmo that they use to count the vote comes into question, and perhaps you know, there's some indication that those scanners might not be properly calibrated. In theory, you at least have a freaking piece of paper that some human being can go through and tabulate manually if it's required. Is that so? You feel a little bit more confident with that process than the way it's been proposed in some states?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, we have the same type of system here.
Go ahead.
We have the same type of system here in Virginia, and you know, my standard joke when I walked in is, you know, I looked at the thing and I said, okay, so there's no chance of a hanging Chad here, right? And all the election officials giggled and laughed and said, ha 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 ha. And I said, okay, a manual ballot, but who programmed the machine that's going to count the vote? You know, was it Joseph Stalin that programmed the counting of the ballots, or you know? And they didn't laugh about that one. They didn't think that was funny.
Yeah, I'll bet they didn't. But you know, we have Diebold here in Connecticut, and
oh God,
guess what? the Onion video is just laughable, but it's only laughable because there's a certain amount of credibility to it.
Well, you know, there is that movie out there called Black Box Voting. I don't know if you've ever seen that video. I believe that is up on YouTube, and it's it was put out, I don't know, 6-8 years ago by a very sharp lady who did a lot of research into how the election process really happens in the United States, and her behind-the-scenes documentary on it was absolutely frightening. Now, you know, one of the reports
back on topic. You know, we're sort of diverging here, and we want to get back on. I want to get back on topic of whether or not I believe it's important to get out and vote. And I used to believe that no, my vote didn't count. I'm not going to bother voting. But when I look back at history and I look back at the foundation of this country and of the smart people who founded this country and of the importance that they placed on the electoral process and of all the people who have died for us to participate in this process, damn it, I'm going to get out there and vote. Whether or not I think whether or not I'm thinking voting for caca or doo-doo or poo-poo, I'm going to get out there and vote. And eventually, hope that some sort of change can come from it, and some sort of a raising of global consciousness can come from it. And we're getting the message out that the two-party system is a failure, and we need additional parties on the ballot that can actually be voted into office, who could have an impact, who would actually represent the people's wishes, rather than the wishes of big business and of the global elite.
Well, you know, part of the problem that a lot of people point to is that running an election campaign today in the United States costs a fortune. I mean, a guy is running for an office that pays about $100,000 a year. He's got 2 years at $100,000 a year that he gets, and he has to spend like $500,000 or $750,000 to get this job that's going to pay him $100,000 for 2 years. Now, all you got to do is some simple mathematics, and you got to figure, you know, the math don't work. Okay, he's got $500,000 in his hand, and he's going to spend that $500,000 to get this job that pays $100,000 for 2 years. That guy is either challenged when it comes to doing mathematics, or there's some other motivator in there. You know, I mean, so the problem is not the parties. The problem is the money. The money has taken over the election process. And the reason corporations have a heck of a lot more influence on our politicians than you and I do is that you and I do not have the ability to write that big, you know, $10,000 check or $50,000 check or whatever to go to the front of the line.
As you always say, we have the best government that money can buy.
And it does appear to have been bought. The problem is it wasn't bought by you and it wasn't bought by me.
Well, here's my hope. My hope.
Go ahead.
Cyber will take over, and and they won't be able to buy us anymore.
Well, I hate to say it, but you know, anarchy is starting to look really attractive to me. You know, maybe the best government is just no government. You know, I don't know. I may have to think about that some more because we've got about a half a minute here, Mark. They're going to, you know, drag the hook out and pull us off the stage here just about any time now. I'd like you to have at least the next 10, 15 seconds to give your closing remarks.
The closing remark is, whether or not you believe your vote has any value, please get out there and vote. Too much has been paid for your privilege to do that, and we need to send a message loud and clear to our government that we want a voice heard in government.
Yeah, even if instead of circling one of the circles, you write in like I did, no confidence. But in any case, Mark, I thank you for your call. I'm going to have to cut you loose. I'm hearing the music in the background. They're getting ready to
Thanks,
shut
Gary.
me down for the night. Thank you all for listening to tonight's Wide Awake News. My name is Gary Hendershot, and you betcha I'll be back next Tuesday, and we'll do some more barking at the moon. Good night, all.
A little red.
All righty, I think I'm disconnected from the Rents Network now. I want to thank Rob from calling in, and thank Mark, who I believe has an alias in the chat room. That what do you think? Can I tell him who that was, Mark, or should I keep my mouth shut? I think a number of them recognized your voice. That was our friend from the chat room, Zero Fossil Fuel, who called in from Connecticut and gave us his take on voting in the United States. Whether you voted for doo-doo or caca or poo-poo, or like I did and just wrote in no confidence and then voted absolutely not on all the bond issues that they were trying to trigger. I don't know how it was. We're in Connecticut, Zero, but we had 2 seats that we had up for grabs during this election, but we had 4 or 5 different ways they wanted to spend more of your money. So for the 2 guys that were running, I just voted. I wrote in no confidence. I didn't care for any of them. I wish I could have voted none of the above. That would have been what I really wanted to put. But that was done in a Superman episode, I think. But on the back, they had all these bond issues they wanted to get approval on. The bond issues always seem to win, because I think average voter says, oh, yeah, but, they issue these bonds, and I don't have to pay those back. My children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren have to pay those back, so I get the benefit of that money being spent today, and my generation doesn't have to pay for that. Well, is that any way to? Oh well, But they're always, wanting school bond issues or something. Oh, we got to build a whole bunch of more schools. They renovated the school near me, and you know what got renovated? All the administrators and the social workers and all that got lavish new offices, and they still got about 20% of the kids taking their classes in trailers on what used to be the playground. So that's whenever they have one of these school bond issues where they want to renovate our schools and make our schools better for the children. Yeah, right. Yeah, so I just immediately go down the list. No, you cannot spend any more of my money. Any case, you guys in the chat room, you got any hot items in the news? I did indeed focus on the elections. Hey, it's election day. It seemed like the topic that we really should be discussing. I don't have any inside information on results. I don't know who the big winners are, who the big losers are. I know that a lot of people seem to think that the Republicans are going to take control of at least the Senate, and they have a chance of who of taking over the Congress. We just don't know yet. My point is, I'm not really sure it's going to make a bit of difference. They're still not going to do what I want them to do. They're going to figure out ways to spend more of your money, tax you more, and probably involve you in more wars, regardless of whether there's a Democrat or Republican. I know I'm not sure who your governor in Connecticut is, Zero. I know my governor is some carpetbagger from Massachusetts who snuck in during a period of weakness. So what else was in the news that I missed while I was so focused on the election process? Anybody find any really hot items in the news that I probably should have made time to discuss, but I was just thoroughly saturated with election news? Any comments about let's see, the Virgin crash? Yeah, that's kind of a shame. Frankly, I hope those boys pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and keep working at it. I mean, look, it's a risky business. It's a risky business, and if I had to pick on them for something, they apparently were using a rocket motor and some fuel that was not really well tested. See, in the first flight of that Virgin spacecraft, I think it was Spacecraft 1, or I can't remember how they've got some cute name that Branson gives his spacecraft. But the first one, they used a rubber compound and laughing gas as the fuel. And a lot of people fussed about the toxic fumes that the thing was giving off. I mean, this thing billowing black smoke, and it was absolutely noxious, the exhaust that was coming out of this thing. So a lot of people fussed at them about their choice of fuels for their rocket engine. So that being sensitive, greeny types, they went about using a new type of engine, using a plastic type fuel, and again, laughing gas, nitrous oxide, that's the oxidizer used. And this engine apparently was not very well tested, and there's some indication that it was a failure of the rocket motor that caused other problems. Now, I'm not absolutely sure. My big position on the Virgin space program is spaceflight is dangerous. There are risks involved. Hopefully, the people who are involved with our first little tiptoes into commercial space, hopefully they're aware of the risks. You takes your chances. Sometimes you wins, sometimes you loses. I hope they keep going at it. I really do. Problem was the wings coming out prematurely. Is that a fairly new report, Shubas? Did that? Because the first report I heard was that it was a problem with the engine and the fuel. So I don't know. I hadn't heard this report about the. I know this thing. When it comes back in as a glider, and it sprouts wings on its way down to give it a little bit more lift. And one of the fellows in the chat room, a fellow who goes by the name Shubas, is saying that he's heard a report that the crash was not due to the new fuel engine, but that it was apparently the wings sprouted a little prematurely, and that's what caused the crash. I understand one of the pilots died. The surprising thing is that one of the pilots apparently survived. I mean, when you think about it, they're in a freaking rocket ship and it crashes, and one of the guys actually walks away. That's that's a pretty scary thing to happen, and one of the guys actually survived. So all things considered, I'd say lessons learned. Hopefully the next one will work. So what else? Zero Fossil Fuel is apparently a bit upset. He indicates that a fellow named Malloy might have won as governor in the state of Connecticut. Apparently, Zero Fossil Fuel is not particularly happy about that. These are still probably early results, Zero. They haven't counted all the votes from the cemeteries yet. So you just never know until they count that dead vote. There's been a lot of elections turned right at the last minute in Maryland by the vote count from the cemeteries. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. So the guy who survived, he bailed out. Cool. Okay. Hey, if those aliens could crash in Roswell, yeah, okay. All right, I'm looking to see if maybe there's any Okay, one of the fellows, Chicken Pimp J, says that the pilot that died had problems with his ejection apparatus not working properly. This must be a new report you guys have seen, because I thought I was pretty much up to date on the crash of the Virgin craft. Now the big boys blew up a rocket that was supposed to be resupplying the International Space Station. They tried to launch that thing right off of Wallops Island, right off the coast of Virginia, near where I live. And, apparently that thing got 6 seconds into its flight and blew the hell up. So, even the big boys sometimes have challenges, with their rocketry. It is, after all, rocket science, rocket science and brain surgery, yeah. Here's hoping the zombies are Republicans. All right. Got Acorns signing up Ebola people. Oh, Acorn's going, yeah. Oh, boy, yeah. I saw a report that, problem is I don't know the veracity of the material, but there's some indication that somebody with military was playing with combining Ebola with the common cold to make it more easily transmissible via airborne. So I don't know. You hear all kinds of I'm the kind of guy. Look, I wear a tinfoil hat and I try and wear titanium underdrawers. As if the tinfoil hat can't keep those microwaves from changing my personality, at least the titanium underdrawers will keep me from getting shot in the butt. But some of this stuff, although it's interesting information, you want to be aware that these reports are out there. I don't really know the pedigree of the material, so I'm a little hesitant to put it forward as fact if I don't really know. Yes, Antares blew up. You saw it live, yeah. I'm about 150 miles from the coast, so it would have been a challenge for me to get out to see him shoot that thing off live. But it's interesting that they do have a launch facility on Wallops Island, right off the coast of Virginia, where they do. I don't think they've ever shot up off a manned mission from there, but yeah, they launch a lot of satellites and so forth right from the coast of Virginia. Well, guys, I'm starting to run out of gas. It has been a long day for me. I'm thinking seriously. Eugenics by the elite says as a new news piece, Maury, or as an ongoing quest. I mean, there have been elements within the ruling class that have argued in favor of culling the herd for hundreds of years. That's nothing new. They've had some successes, some failures. Some say that the wars are really intended as a means of controlling the excess population. Frankly, I think the wars are more about money and power, but I don't know. There might be an argument for them using Ebola and whatever else to control the surplus population. From their point of view, this would be their personal little paradise, if not for all of us useless eaters. Yeah, it is an ongoing thing. It is an ongoing challenge for the ruling class to maintain the herd at what they refer to as sustainable levels. Yeah. Well, guys, I think I'm going to have to bag it. Sorry for the short after show, but to be honest with you, I'm tired. I really need to get to bed. I had a really late nighter last night. I was working until 3 o'clock in the morning. So that's going to have to be it. We'll see you next Tuesday, and we will once again be barking at the moon as if anybody out there was really listening or really cared. And Zero, thanks for calling in. You, I think you helped me make my arguments pretty well. Y'all have a good evening. We'll see you next Tuesday.
Calling out to you, won't you turn around? Oh, I'm calling out to you, won't you turn around? Oh, the point of no return is just ahead now.